My problem is I did exactly the wrong thing. I entered on trend break.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but it makes sense, right?
Yes, it does.
You never buy trend breaks. That's something that people get very confused. That's something people have very, very backwards. Trend breaks are great. They fuel moves, but they aren't entries. They're trigger points. Trigger points are not entries. Entries are hold levels, and hold levels continue to hold until a trigger point is met on either side. So if you simply enter a hold level, like even look, if you simply enter a hold level, right?
Can you share again, please?
I think I clicked the wrong button here.
See, you'll see a 1 hour. You'll see a 1 hour uptrend that I saw it breaking, and I exited that, but it was crazy.
Yeah. So you simply have a hold level, right? It creates your trend. You've entered the hold level. The hold level does hold. That creates your trend because that's going to be the swing low, right? Like that's the thing about a hold level. A hold level, if it holds, will always be a trend creation. Okay. So when you have this hold level here, if this holds the move, if this is an untested hold level, it'll always create a trend. Okay. So that's like one of the important pieces to understand here. You hit a hold level that's untested, it creates your trigger point. So a hold level creates the actual trigger for the move. That gives you your next hold level, your polarization, blah, 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 all that stuff we talk about. Fine. Your hold level creates that trigger point. You're in the trade. You can never be unprofitable because until this breaks, you'll never be losing money. So you either simply hit a target up top. Now that comes back to defining profit caps properly. So you either hit a hold level up top, okay, or you trigger out of the trade below. But to buy this trend break is silly because you should have already been in the trade from here, right? Like
do you see where your red text is around 6 a.m. where it begins?
Oh, Gilbert's muted. He can't tell you.
Yeah.
Around 6 a.m.
Do you see the where the whole level is touched around 6 a.m. on yours?
Yeah.
Now, you see the way there's an uptrend that starts off that, and I entered on the break of that little uptrend.
1 second here. Let me fix Dilbert.
Let me.
Here, I'm going to do it like this. 1 second. I'm going to mute everybody and allow everybody to unmute themselves. So if anybody wants to talk, then they just unmute themselves. Because I think some people have. There you go.
I'm fixed.
There you go. So Pat, here, what you've done is you have some kind of uptrend that you entered. I'm going to delete my X's here. And that becomes a local trigger point, right? Like if you're in that moment, let's see the replayer tool.
So that white one there, yeah, that was it.
You're in this moment and you're saying, oh, my hold level is hit. I'm going to exit based on this. But this is a scalp trade, right? Like this is a scalp trade. And you'd probably want to find a higher time frame.
It was a 1 hour. It was on the 1 hour that I entered.
Yeah, but then simply your target would have been this right here anyways. So your target is hit. Or if you're going for a longer trade, you're using your trigger point here, right? Like you're using your trend because this hold level gets hit. It creates your trend, which gives you kind of your polarity in the move, right? Like it says, okay, hold level here. This then moves to here. Don't exit the trade until my trend is hard closed or broken. We're just going to say broken. Don't enter it until it's broken, right? So you have polarity here, which is now going to be moved to here, right? And then once that breaks, it's just going to go to the higher target, right? So you're just polarizing pieces of the move to the move. So you're like your trigger point there. Your trigger point there was a scalp, right? Like just like I said, like very low, the most local, as local as it gets is just a scalp trade. You either hit a target on one side or you exit on your trigger on the other side. If you do this, you can never lose money because you hit a hold level holds, and you're in that trade in profits until one of two scenarios happen. Like theoretically, if you're buying hold levels, okay, if that hold level holds, you should always exit with profits, no matter what. You should always be exiting with profits because from that moment on, you've got a trend that's created, right? So like here.
I suppose what concerns me is that I shorted the break of that small uptrend rather than longing. And it's how I got it completely backwards. It bothers me.
Right there. That's it right here in this moment, right? So that's this guy right here, right? So that's the low of the move on the higher time frame. Your hold level is right here. Your hold level is hit. Your trend is created. You are polarized if you lose this, which moves to here, which is now here. So you're going back to the beginning of this trade. If you have, and we're going to delete this guy here. That's fine. If this hold level holds, right, like this, you create trend, which means you always will exit in profits. You've created trend. Once that trend closes, you take your profits. Now, profits could be 2%, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, 100%. As time goes on and this trigger point doesn't release, you're making more and more and more. That is more of a position or a swing trade. And like I said, you have targets on the other side. So you have to give yourself your profit cap of where this thing can possibly go, right? So, at first it's here, right? So, depending on what you want out of this trade, like this is personal decision. Always going to be better to take more trades because you could simply go right there. Your first trade is executed, rebuy right here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this and move this to here and move this one to here. So now you have another trade that you could execute, right? And you could continuously execute these scalps until this trend breaks. So then you just, okay, we got perfect entry there. We're going to go to our next point, which is up there. And it just reached that there, right? So then you're either trend or level. And then so you've got a new trade that happened. And you can consistently, you can either take your profits on your target, right? You might even want to hold up to this, or you could simply just exit this trade. If you lose polarity, it would be the first spot to exit this trade. Or you lose your trigger point, that would be your second. But you can, if you hit a hold level and a hold level holds, you should 100%, there should be no reason you ever don't make profits on that move. So it just becomes a very fine process of pick the right hold level. That holds, understand the architecture going forward, right? So part of the architecture of learning chart architecture is using a lot of these different kind of combined theories together that we'll be doing over the next little while, right? Like today was kind of the first time we've ever done like procedural mixed with technical, right? There's a technical on the hold level, there's a technical trend, and then there's a procedural way that this works. So this is very simple. You never lose money on this trade if a hold level holds. And if we know to always buy untested hold levels, then we can kind of in a way never lose money on any trade. Buy untested hold levels, starting with the largest ones, working down to your comfort levels, right? So if you have to use only 4-hour hold levels because that's all you're comfortable with, then you only make money on the 4-hour hold levels. Means you never lose money in any trade. If you get more comfortable with it, you can work your way down and get more accurate with the 1-hour hold levels and understanding which 1-hour hold levels will be respected and touched. And then you've just entered more trades, right? You've started to expose yourself to more trades based on your ability to technically understand the finer time frames, which is the 1 hour, and then fourth and fourth and fourth and fourth, all the way down to 5-minute or 3-minute levels, or 1-minute levels if you're really good, 1 and 3-minute levels, and you can enter even 10 and 20 times the amount of trades on these smaller hold levels. But the finer in hold levels you get, the finer in time frames, or the smaller the time frame, the harder it becomes, because if you work with a 1 minute, you have to consider the 3, 5, 15, 1, 4, 6, 12, everything on your bar. If you work with a 1 minute, you have to consider it all. If you work with a 3 minute, what you don't have to consider is the 1 minute. So every time you move up in a time frame, you have less work to do because you're not considering the lower time frames, right? So if you're working on an hourly chart, you simply say, where's an hourly hold level? Well, there's one right there. Look, perfect. But it means you can't work with anything lower if you're not at that level yet. So the higher the level you get, the more experienced you get, the lower the time frame. It's kind of like a good gauge of how good or bad of a trader you are, is that the lower the time frame you can accurately go makes you a better trader. Maybe you're not good enough to do the 1 hour. Maybe you have to stick to the 4 hour. Well, where's the 4-hour levels? Well, this one isn't really working. So you'd be down here. You wouldn't have been in any trades yet because you'd be, waiting for your trade, but maybe you're good enough to do 1-hour trades, 1-hour hold levels. So, then you'd be here, and that one got hit. So there's a trade there. There's 2 there. This one possibly looks like it broke. Okay, backside right there. Sorry, there's 3 there, backside, front side. With the understanding and realization that, once a range is tested, it's a tested range. So, if this is going to test twice, I'm not sure. Maybe it does on a lower time frame. So that would have been the back side, and then the front side of the range would have been right here. So the front side of the back, so the range did test twice, the back side, front side, or maybe tested twice right here. So it did test twice right here. So this is the second test, which brings you to your untested hold level, which would have been right here, right? But you wouldn't have seen that if you were only on the hourly charts because you're not at that level. As the smaller the time frame you use, you have to be a better trader. And the smaller the time frame means you have to consider all the above pieces. So if you can only do 4-hour hold levels, you only have a handful of things to worry about, which become very easy because like a 4 to a 12, for example, is like a big jump in time frames. Like you're not going to have a lot of trades happening very often if you're using 4 and 12-hour candles, right? Like whatever this is here is the same as this here. So we can just move it to there even. Whatever this is, how often is this going to get hit? Once every 3 or 4 days, maybe on either which side, once every 3 to 4 days. How often is an hourly going to get hit? A couple times a day. How often is a 15-minute going to get hit? A couple times every 4 hours, maybe 1 or 2 times on either which side, and so forth and so forth. So you see what I mean about measurement of how good of a trader you are is how further down in time frames you can work and accurately pick the right levels. But if you were to simply understand that, like, hey, here's a 15-minute hold right here. Yeah, I can enter that. Great, perfect. I can create my trigger point, enter the 15-minute hold. If it holds, create a trigger point. I'm always in profits. There's never a scenario that should exist if this hold level holds that you don't have profits. And that doesn't open the door for you to start trading multiple pieces on multiple timeframes, right? Because then, again, going back to the beginning of the lesson, this is that splitting of, okay, we have triggers and targets. So enter here, for example, once again, you enter here, exit right there, enter back right here, right? That's the hold level. Simple. Enter there, exit here, here, this trend or this trend, but they all have a different meaning. If this trend breaks, know that this isn't going to be a valid target. If this trend breaks, you're moving up in range, but this doesn't mean you should enter the trade. You should already be in this trade from down back here. Because look, if I was in this trade, and let's just delete all these and go back to here where a trade executes. If this hold level holds, we should always make profits, right? And it did. And we no longer have a hold level here. We have this up here and we have that up there. So then you should only exit if you either hit this target, which is another 100%, only ever hit that target 100%, break and hard close this trend because it's collapsing down to this part of the range, which means you're going to get liquidated. So that's key. Once this trend goes, you're liquidated to here, right? Actually, I don't know if you'd get liquidated, but I sure as hell wouldn't I wouldn't give up profits to see what happens on risk losing 60% because I'm just stubborn. Like, this just doesn't make sense. If this hold level holds, you should make money no matter what. Right? That just like if this hold level right here holds, make money no matter what, because either a target gets hit or your trend is triggered and you're still in the trigger point. So now you just simply have a decision. Do I want to take my target exit right here? Do I want to see if this hold level spikes up? Do I want to see if this trigger gets released? And so we kind of move forward into this, and you're right here in this moment. Actually, your target gets hit pretty good. So you could be in this trade and you could say even like this, okay, where's my trigger point that is even more interior right here? I'd really like to see distribution, to be honest with you. Distribution. So something like this would kind of be like my max tolerance. I've kind of frayed this out. So you know what? If I lose this, I would just get out because I'm most likely coming back down to here. Like you're gapping between two different pieces, right? Like you're just gapping between two different pieces. But you entered a hold level. You have your targets. Either your target gets hit or you willingly stay in this. And you say, okay, my target was hit. Now, you should hit your target and look for reentry because there's going to be a hold level that gets hit there. However, you can hit targets and you can just stay in this perpetually until this breaks. But even if you stay in it perpetually until this breaks, you're still in profits. You're just forfeiting some of the profits, but that's fine. There's a line. You either get max profits before collapse or you split the difference and say, I'm in this trade until this breaks. Half of the time this breaks and I just take my exit with lower profits. The other half this breaks and I take higher profits, right? But again, the point being is that you have triggers and targets. They're both trigger points. Again, a trigger is just something that exits a trade. Where's your trigger point? you have targets and you have trends. And if a hold level holds, you should always be in profits. There should be no exception to that, right? You can see this is compressing it right now. So you could simply stay in this. And if you're staying in this trade because this trend is a trigger, what you are saying is this trend is my trigger point to get out, and I am trying to break this trend up, right? And you would justify this trend break based on some other big moment. There's no polarity left. All the hold levels have been hit. We're breaking polarization, which means, maybe this is the final moment of polarization, so that when you get on top of this, you're soaring up here, right? Like there's a bigger justification to that. You don't need to see, like, even right now, you're just giving up profits. Your target was hit. You should be out of this trade. Or again, it's not wrong to stay in it, but realize that you're giving up profits to see if this trend can break, right? So it gives clarity to the move. So then you could just, trail this back and say, well, where's my polarity? Look, this has already been tested here. Whatever, this has been tested. This hasn't. So this needs to hold. So if I lose this, then that would be like another kind of trigger point where it's like, okay, well, I should exit the trade because there's nothing left below that's untested. So we're probably collapsing down to this down here, right? So it gives a lot of clarity on the trade. It gives a great amount of clarity. But by not taking targets, we forfeit profits. It's fine. Sometimes it pays off. Realize that you're saying, I don't want this to be a scalp trade. I'm in this for a swing trade. So if you're not going to take this rate, if you're not going to take this as profits, you might as well stay in this trade until this trend breaks. Now you might forfeit all your profits. You might end up with only 25% profits. You might end up with 30%. Look, like right here, what was this? This was a full percent, I believe. Yeah, you've got 100 or 110% here. Let's call it 100%. You got 100% here, or if your trend breaks, you've got 20%. So you gave up 80% of your profits. But if you're not going to take this exit, that's the trade you're in. You might as well either take this exit if that's what you're doing, or you stay in it longer. You stay in it longer because of the strength of the trigger point, and the strength of the trigger point is dictated on the bigger time frames.